the bell has rung. So get seated and join Elementary Schooled for today's interview.
Recently, I test drove a CX-90 over at Bountiful Mazda, and I came back and I said, what is up with this car? Why is this so smooth? And the gentleman told me this is the inline six turbo. Okay, not quite sure what that means, but all I can tell you is pretty dang cool. So go and test drive a Mazda at Bountiful Mazda, and thanks for being sponsors to Elementary School. Welcome to Elementary School. This is season 2, episode 5, and today's topic is the hungry student. I am happy to introduce you, Kathleen Britton. You are born and raised in Long Island, New York, and moved to Utah in 1983. And it sounds like the mountains overtook you and it was just too good and you had to stay.
Correct.
You are the Director of Child Nutrition Programs at the Utah State Board of Education since February of 2014. Prior to becoming a state director, you were the Director of Child Nutrition Services in Park City from 1992 to 2014. And before that time, it sounds like you worked as a dietitian. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Thank you for caring about children, about nutrition, and helping us in the state of Utah to meet those needs of families.
Thank you for having me.
Will you share some national as well as our state statistics about children that are coming to school hungry?
Yeah, so currently through data that we receive from our school districts every October, there's about almost 31% of our children fall under the economic need of meals, meaning they qualify for some kind of subsidies, free and reduced meals, or food stamps, or any of those other services that are out there. So we then work with our school districts to make sure that these parents fill out the correct applications to get these services. So applications are yearly.
Okay.
They have to be filled out you get 30 days from the first school day to have the same benefits as you had last year. So if you were on free and reduced last year, you have 30 days as a parent to fill out that application again this year to get those benefits. What we saw during our pandemic, when the government shut down and allowed all these waivers, parents didn't have to fill out the application. So all the schools had free meals and they didn't have to do the paperwork. Since the waivers have dissolved and we are now at the new norm, parents need to remember to fill out these applications, which has been a big struggle the last year because it's not a habit they were used to.
It was reported last April in Utah News that Utah students have over $1.7 million in school lunch debt. And that, first of all, I want to be clear that this debt happened because the program that came to be during the pandemic, where it provided relief for families that had a need. Like you said, they didn't have to fill out paperwork. In fact, I remember students and families being surprised, like, oh, lunch is free. It took a while to catch on. But we've had a hard time getting back on track after that. Let's talk about that debt. I know the report the article that was in the news said that 35 of the 41 school districts in Utah responded with their debt. And then you also mentioned that charter schools weren't represented possibly in that article. And so the debt is probably much higher than the 1.7 million. What is happening with that now? What's an update?
So currently, hopefully parents know now to fill out an application so that they can get these services, and that if you don't qualify for free or reduced, that there is a cost to these meals. All of our meals we are a federally subsidized program. So all of the meals, even a paid student's meal, is federally subsidized, which a lot of parents don't realize, to help defer some of that cost. School districts have been really working diligently through social media, through their own homepages, to get parents to understand that meals aren't free anymore, that you need to pay for these meals, that the government isn't subsidizing them. And I think that is a misunderstanding for several parents, that the kids go to school, that it's our tax dollars, but it's not state taxes that pay for these meals, it's federal dollars. And that was through the COVID relief fund that they paid for all those meals. So there is a representative out there right now that is trying to help with some of this. He is going to try to run a bill this legislative session. So if anybody's interested, they could follow along. He's a young representative, Representative Clancy from Provo, very energetic, has some great ideas. He would like to starting with maybe setting up a trust fund that people that want to donate can donate and get tax write-offs for it. And then this fund would grow and grow. And then eventually there would be enough money in this fund to help all students in the state of Utah. And that's long down the road, 10, 12 years from now. But currently what he is also trying to do is have a tax write-off for parents that say want to make a donation to a school, as we saw several parents did last year when the news came out about the debt. So this would help defer some tax credits for them also if this passes. There is another caveat of the bill that he would like to get the state legislative to cover a reduced price meal. So currently there's two categories, a free and then a reduced. If you're free, you're 130% of the poverty level. Reduced is 185%. So reduced parents, we find fall in that little area that may necessarily can't even afford that. And some of that debt is caused by that. And that's sad to see and hear, because for them, it's 30 cents for breakfast and 40 cents for lunch. So it's 70 cents a day.
So I know we can't take on maybe the 1.7 million today, but we could at least help these two schools out, which are in great need. And it's Stansbury Park Elementary and Old Mill Elementary in the Tooele School District. And at those two schools, the elementary lunch is $2.10. So to feed a child for 1 week, lunch would be $10.50. And so anyone that does listen to this today and your heart's kind of stirred, if you do want to help those two specific schools where families are burdened by the debt that they've accrued since COVID times, once that's wiped clean, then they might feel less burdened and like they have a better chance of keeping up with meals for their students. So if anyone would like to donate to that, go to Venmo. I'll put this at the end of the podcast and also in the notes, but the QR code will be up at the end of this episode to be able to Venmo Elementary School. That doesn't have any dashes, dots, anything in it. Just keep it real simple. Venmo Elementary School. Even if you just Venmo $2.10, you are feeding a child lunch for 1 day. And so thank you. Thanks for giving us an update, and hopefully that bill will go through, because you think a big hesitation for people is if they don't think they'll get the tax write-off. They don't want to maybe pay off a debt for a school if they're going to pay such a large amount and not get a tax credit. So that's really important.
Mm-hmm. And I think the third part of the bill was to come up with about $4 million a year to pay for this reduced price parents' meals.
It's nice to know the behind the scenes and what's happening. And so it sounds like Representative Clancy is doing a great job for us. Thank you to him. We know children who have proper nutrition have a much better chance to do well in the classroom and be able to focus and have some academic achievement. Will you talk about that?
Sure. We all know, like you mentioned, that a hungry child cannot learn. They cannot learn in school. And so back in 2019, I'm a very strong advocate of our breakfast programs. We started a bill called the Start Smart Breakfast, and that was passed so that now every school district has to have a breakfast program option for students. In our areas that are low income, they have to have an alternative type of breakfast, because as we know, in those areas, sometimes those kids show up late or they're running behind. So an alternative breakfast program means you can have a second chance breakfast, that you do breakfast at a middle school or high school at 9 o'clock in the morning instead of at 7 o'clock in the morning. Breakfast in the classroom. And all these studies have shown that this is very, very beneficial for students that come to school hungry. So it's exciting to see this roll out. It passed right before the pandemic. So right now we're just starting to see how well this is doing.
the results of the Smart Start program.
Mm-hmm.
Will you tell us the other good news about helping our hungry students? I noticed that there are several programs. Will you lead us to the right spot where we find all of these resources?
It is on Utah State Board of Education's website, the Child Nutrition Programs.
Name of
It
that.
is www.schools.utah.gov.
I see this great list of after-school snack programs and farm to fork, food distribution programs, fresh fruit and vegetable programs, and national school breakfast program. Are all of these things currently in place?
Yes. Yes, all of these programs are currently going on. I don't think a lot of parents really know that all of these are going on in your schools right now. The farm to fork, the fresh fruit and vegetable programs are at the elementary schools. The USDA food that actually comes into our schools to help provide these healthy meals. This is to help subsidize our local farmers. We have local food that we purchase for our school districts, and school districts purchase also to serve meals.
Is the same reason that sometimes parents don't know, is the same reason that teachers don't know, and that's because our generous nutrition ladies at the schools, they just handle a lot of this.
That is so true. Yes.
Yeah.
Your child nutrition staff at our schools become second moms and dads and mentors to our children.
And they are the ones that put these things in place. And we see our staff doing a great job in the mornings too. And they have to get there extra early to do this. And then in the summers, what happens for the summer program? What does that work?
In the summer, when school gets out, we have a summer program. So students can go to certain areas that qualify to either have lunch in the park or at a school district, or sometimes the food bank will go to the rural areas. You'll see their trucks that have meals that they're providing in our rural areas for families that are in need. We've also had pandemic EBT, which was a card that they would get, and that has ended, but a new program that will be starting in 24-25 is summer EBT, that if a family qualifies, they can get an EBT card, an electronic benefit card, like you would get for food stamps, that has $40 a month on it during the summertime to provide food for children. And that you need to qualify under the free and reduced lunch application for that.
So if you don't have an electric benefit card, what you're saying is they have the availability of food being picked up at certain places.
Correct.
Based on
Yes.
how your area does it. So when those students are picking up meals, do they have to do it on a daily basis, or is it like pick it up on Monday and that's your lunches for the whole week, or how does that work?
It's per day.
Okay.
You have to go to the site and have to eat your meal on the site.
And you eat your meal at the site and eat with students. So if they are part of a summer school or something like that, that's probably already happening. But if not, if your child isn't in summer school, then these resources are still available every day.
Correct. And a lot of times there's activities for them. You'll have the fire departments show up, or you'll have some boys and girls clubs show up and do activities, or an art activity will show up. So they try to make sure there's some activities for the students too, to encourage them to come there and stay on site to eat, because part of the regulations state they need to stay on site and eat the meal and they cannot leave.
I haven't taught at a low economic school for many years. Can you just give us some insight to what you've seen and just how important this is and the struggle? I mean, I've seen specific students struggle, and it does tear at your heart. And as a teacher, I can help if you only have one or two in a classroom, but those areas where you have, 75, 80% of your classroom in struggling, talk to us about just the realness of this, of what you've seen in your work.
I don't think a lot of people understand how it is in their backyard, whether they want it to be or not. That people struggle and fall on hard times. And these meals, breakfast, lunch, after school snack, or even at risk, which is a supper for students, are probably some of the only meals they may receive for that day.
Yeah.
And Their parents are working maybe 2 or 3 jobs and they're not home. So there's nobody there to feed them meals. And so they rely on this. And it's an important, as we all know, during the pandemic, it came to the forefront how important food is for people, and especially for our vulnerable population of young children. We have a community eligibility program, it's called, and that is those areas that qualify. Parents don't even have to fill out an application if they're already on a directly certified, meaning they've already qualified for SNAP or any other federal assistance. Then that school applies, and all those children in that area, in that school, get free meals and snacks or at risk.
Say the name of that program again.
The eligibility program, it's CEP. That's the short acronym for it. And then there's also an after-school snack program. So if you're staying after school for an activity, they provide snacks for them. And then on top of that, we have an at-risk supper program. So if you're in a Boys and Girls Club or a program after school that runs late, then they can be provided, if they are eligible, to provide them a supper, which is like a big snack, we call it. It could be like a sandwich and a milk, or it could, it's not necessarily a hot meal. Some schools do hot meals if they have the staff to do that, but it's a bigger snack than just say a granola bar and a juice. We also oversee the emergency assistance program, which brings food into our food banks, which help fill some of our pantries. So we need to remind our families and our parents that are struggling that there is food pantries out there that they can go to, and that can help alleviate some of this burden with food costs right now. The Utah Food Bank has a very big food pantry, and then there's several pantries that are provided by either your local churches or even in your local areas that we encourage parents to go to. We also oversee community programs, which is our child and adult care programs. So if your children go to a child care center and get a free meal or get meals, we oversee those to make sure those are healthy meals that those children receive. We do Head Start programs. We oversee the Head Start programs and make sure those meals are healthy.
So if people want to help, the best way is to help the food pantry and load the food pantry, or what would you say?
I would say reach out to your local food pantries. I also would reach out to your local child nutrition programs. They are struggling right now, like everybody else, to try to find labor. So if you have a couple hours a day that you want to go and work in a school or volunteer in a kitchen or work in a kitchen, they would be more than welcome to have you, because they are struggling just like all of our other businesses in finding people that will work.
Kathleen, let me ask you, what do you hear from parents at the level you are with the child nutrition program? What are you hearing, and what is your best advisement to parents that have questions?
I get a lot of parents that don't quite understand what is happening at the school level and what their children are eating for breakfast, for lunch, for snack. They hear maybe their child comes home and says, I was hungry. All I got was a roll for lunch today. And I encourage parents, go and have lunch with your child, have breakfast with your child, see all the fresh fruits and vegetables that are being offered and all the healthy alternatives there
are. Thank you, Kathleen. You are brilliant in helping students of Utah and helping our nutrition. Thanks for your expertise and all these resources that you have shared. I do like to end with a little Christian clip, and it's just what I do because I feel it in my heart. But this is in Galatians, and it's bear one another's burdens. Just quick and simple. Well, I encourage listeners, if you feel inspired at all today, to help, please Venmo Elementary School if you don't have the time right now to go to a food bank and participate that way, or do both. Do one with your family and then pay $2.10 to feed a child today and send that to elementary school. That there's a huge need here in Utah, and it is in our backyard indeed. So Kathleen, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for being part of today's class. To submit a question or topic for further episodes, please email elementary.schooled@outlook.com. School is out for today. But please remember, when we strengthen a child, we strengthen society.